So today we're going to talk about adding and subtracting numbers with decimals in them. Now you guys have been working on adding and subtracting multi-digit numbers for a while now, but adding numbers that have multiple digits in them that have decimals is the same idea. It's just one extra step that you have to do. So what you have to do is you have to first line up your decimals. And this kind of is related to fractions, in that when you're adding and subtracting fractions, you always have to find a common denominator. Well, in this case, we have to make sure that we're adding common things. So you'll see when we add it up. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's line up our decimals first. Do 2 and 35 hundredths. Now in this case we're adding 13 and 4 tenths. So you can see that one time we're adding hundredths and one time we're adding something with tenths. And just like in fractions, you know you have to find a common denominator. So in this case, we want to make sure that we're adding the same thing. So we'll put a decimal here because remember step 1 says line up your decimals. And then we're going to put the 1 here and the 3 here. So that we're adding the same place value. And then we've got to add the 4 in the tenths place, and we're adding. Now if you see step 3, it says add any placeholder zeros. And what that means is, do you see how there's a blank space right here? We want to make it so that we're having a common denominator. So 4 tenths, if we add a 0 here, because we know that hiding behind a decimal to infinity is zeros. So in this case, we have 35 hundredths. Now what do we have? We have 40 tenths. So, excuse me, 40 hundredths. 4 tenths is the same thing as 40 hundredths. And you know that because if you think about money, you know that too. 4 dimes is 40 cents. All right, now all we have to simply do is solve, and we'll add. 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 4 is 7. Bring down your decimal. 2 plus 3 is 5. And 1 plus nothing is 1. So we get 15 and 75 hundredths. Now we can check with estimation. We're adding about 2, right? It's the nearest whole number. And we're adding about 13. 2 plus 13 is 15, and our answer is 15 and 75 hundredths. So we know we got it pretty close. All right, so now let's try one together. I'm going to keep that this over. You might be able to see some of the steps. Okay, so in this one it's a subtraction problem, but it's the same thing. We have 17 and 9 tenths minus 5 and 435 thousandths. So you can see that we don't have a common thing that we're subtracting yet. We have tenths and we have thousandths, but we're going to after we do step 1, which is to line up the decimals. So go ahead and everybody do that first. So 17 and 9 tenths. Go ahead and put your decimal here, and let's write our number. We've got 5 in the ones place, a 4 here, a 3 here, and a 5. It's a subtraction problem, so I'm going to add my sign. Now, as you can see, I need to, step 2, add placeholder zeros. I need to add my placeholder zeros here and here. Now we're subtracting, so that means we have to borrow, because we can't take 5 from 0. We have to borrow from the neighbor. In this case, we're going to have to borrow as well. 8. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 8 minus 4 is 4. Bring down your decimal. 7 minus 5 is 2. 1 minus 0 is 12. And we can check that by saying, look, we're subtracting about 18, because 17 and 9 tenths is about 18. 18 minus about 5, which would be 13, and that's really close to what we got, which is 12. Another way you can check when you've done subtraction is to check it with addition. So we're going to do that really quickly, because we had to borrow a lot, so we want to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. And we, again, lining up our decimals. That's what we started with. Okay? Alright. This one, let me go over together as well. I know normally I let you do it, but I want you to notice that this is a whole number minus something with a decimal. And you might say, well, how am I supposed to line up my decimals? Well, hopefully you're thinking what do we know about every whole number? There's something hiding. Well, behind every whole number is hiding decimal and then zeros to infinity. So if we needed to line up, we could say 5 and put our decimal here. And let's see how many zeros we need to put. Let's line it up. We have 2 and 35 hundredths. You see how I lined up my decimals? Here was my 5, my whole number. Put a decimal behind it. I need to line up my decimal here. Put a 2 here. So how many placeholder zeros am I going to have to put? 2. That's right. All right, now we have to borrow. This becomes 10. This becomes 9. This becomes 4. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. Now there's two ways we can check it. One way we can check it is with estimation. This is 5 minus about 2. What's 5 minus 2? 3. Is our answer pretty close to 3? Yeah. It's 2 and 65 hundredths. It's pretty close to 3. Now, let's take a look by checking with addition, because it's subtraction, so we can always check with addition. Line up my decimals. Bring down my decimal. 5. Is that the same as 5 wholes? Sure it is. Think about $5. Okay, this last one I want you to try on your own. Think about the steps. Step 1, line up your decimals. Step 2, add placeholder 0. Step 3, solve. And last, check with estimation. So go ahead and pause the video. Alright, and so let's do step 1, which is to line up your decimals. Put this one down here. We've got a 6 in the ones place, and a 7, and a 3, and a 2. One we have, oh, it's adding this time. Hopefully you notice the sign. One thing you notice, we've got thousands and we've got hundreds, so we need to add a placeholder 0, so now that becomes thousands as well. 2 plus 0 is 2, 4 plus 3 is 7, 2 plus 7 is 9. Lining up those decimals, 3 plus 6 is 9, and 1. So we've got 19 and 972 thousandths. Let's check that with estimation to see if it makes sense. We're adding a number that's about 13, and we're adding another number that's about 7. 13 plus 7 is 20. Is our answer pretty close to 20? Yeah, it's really close to 20. So our answer makes sense. So I hope this helped you understand that adding numbers with decimals is very similar to adding any numbers if you just remember the extra steps, which are line up your decimals and add your placeholder zeros.